Bobby was the kind of man people overlooked, not because he wasn't there, but because he didn't seem like he should be. 31 years old, still stammering, shy, and painfully awkward, he spent his days doing the one job nobody else wanted, bringing water to the football players of Louisiana. He was never on the field to play, just always on the sidelines with his beat-up jug and a hopeful heart. Bobby didn't have friends. He didn't have a normal life. What he had was water, and in his mind, water was sacred, clean, cold, hydrating. It was his obsession and his mission. But life had never been kind to Bobby. People teased him, coaches screamed at him, players humiliated him just for sport. He was the joke everyone laughed at but never laughed with. Still, he took the abuse quietly, bottling up every insult, every slap, every cruel joke, until the day came when everything changed. It started like any other. The sun was brutal. The team was ruthless. Bobby, as always, stood on the sidelines, handing out cups like a ghost in human form. Then, one player crossed the line, again. But this time, Bobby didn't just shrink back. Something snapped. And when it did, that soft-spoken waterboy bulldozed a massive linebacker to the ground with a force nobody saw coming. Silence followed. Everyone stood there, blinking in disbelief. That wasn't supposed to happen. That couldn't happen. But it did, and that moment sparked the beginning of Bobby's transformation from a quiet nobody to one of the most terrifying defensive players college football had ever seen. Coach Klein, a man clinging to the remnants of his sanity and a losing streak longer than his resume, was the first to notice the spark. When Bobby asked to volunteer as a water boy for his team, after being fired by another coach for being too weird, Klein didn't expect anything more than a distraction. But then Bobby began rattling off football theories, play strategies, and hydration science like a savant in disguise. Klein saw something, not just in the way Bobby knew the game, but in the way he attacked when he was angry. That raw, pent-up rage was a weapon, and Klein wanted to use it. The next day, Bobby was offered a chance, not to hydrate, but to hit. And boy, did he. Every time someone insulted him, mocked him, or so much as looked at him funny, Bobby saw red. He'd picture that person's face on the opposing team's player and charge like a bull with something to prove. And it worked. The Mud Dogs, once the laughingstock of the league, started winning. Not just scraping by, dominating. Meanwhile, Bobby was living a double life. At home, he still played the role of the obedient son to Mama Helen, a fiercely religious woman who believed football, school, and girls were all the devil's work. She homeschooled Bobby, kept him isolated, and preached that the outside world was a dangerous place. So Bobby lied. He hid his bruises. He made up stories about wrestling alligators. And Mama? She believed every word, until she didn't. The better Bobby got on the field, the harder it became to hide the truth. Fame was creeping up. News crews showed up. Students cheered for him. Girls flirted with him. One, in particular, stood out. Vicky Valancourt, the rebellious beauty who saw something real in Bobby's innocent eyes. Their relationship was sweet, strange, and exactly what Bobby needed. But Mama Helen hated it. She warned him again and again. Girls are the devil. Still, Bobby couldn't stop. Football wasn't just fun anymore. It was purpose. It was passion. It was the first time he felt respected. Klein encouraged him. The team supported him. Even the press was calling him a phenomenon. But then came the fall. Coach Red, Klein's longtime rival and a master of dirty tricks, smelled trouble. He dug into Bobby's past, uncovering the truth. Bobby had never officially graduated. His enrollment was technically invalid. And just like that, the NCAA kicked him off the team. It didn't matter how many sacks he had or how many wins he brought in. Rules were rules. The media flipped on him. The fans disappeared. Bobby was back to being nobody. Except now, he knew what it felt like to be somebody. And he wanted it back. So, he studied. He opened real books, took real classes, and passed a real test, With a 97%, no less, he was ready to return. But then Mama faked being deathly ill. She thought losing football would be better than losing Bobby to the outside world. But Bobby finally stood up to her, not with anger, but with truth. He loved her, but he had to live his own life. And for once, Mama listened. Then came the final battle. The Bourbon Bowl. Without Bobby, the Mud Dogs were getting crushed. Spirits were low. The crowd was restless. Coach Klein had nothing left. Then Bobby arrived. He ran onto the field like a storm. The team rallied. Klein overcame his fear and called out bold plays. And Bobby? He played like a man possessed, crashing into opponents like thunder, visualizing every insult he'd ever taken. Red's team never saw it coming. With seconds left on the clock, Bobby made one final desperate move, hurdling defenders, dodging hits, and diving into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown. The crowd exploded. The Mud Dogs were champions. Coach Klein's reputation was restored. Bobby became a legend. And Mama? She sat in the stands, smiling quietly, finally proud of the boy she'd tried so hard to protect. And as for Bobby and Vicky, they got married, Louisiana style, with lawn mowers instead of limos and fireworks made from homemade explosives. Even Mama gave her blessing, sort of. But just as Bobby thought his story was ending, his estranged father, who'd abandoned him years ago, showed up, hoping to cash in on his success. Bobby didn't flinch. He rejected him flat out, then watched as Mama tackled the man with the fury of 1,000 bayous. That was Bobby's life now. He wasn't just the water boy anymore. He was a warrior, a hero, a legend. Proof that even the most overlooked people can rise, not despite their quirks, but because of them. And all it took was a little respect, a whole lot of anger, and the purest water in all of Louisiana.